Hi and welcome to this tutorial on how to add colours, shadows and highlights using Photoshop to a pencil sketch. If you don't have a sketch that's all ready to go and you're not too sure how to do it, then please make sure to watch our previous tutorial on how to clean up your pencil sketch artwork, available on our channel. But now I have this, I'm going to show you how you can apply colours and highlights to get this working. Now, first of all, I'm just going to do a bit of housekeeping and I'm going to name a few layers here. So I'm just going to call that sketch, and I'm just going to call this white background because that's what it is. And I'm going to create a new layer, which this is going to be my skin tone. Now, I have a paintbrush all ready to go, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I have 100% hard brush, and I'm going to increase my brush size and zooming in, so Control plus to zoom in, or you can use the shortcut that I use, which is holding the Control key and spacebar. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, on my skin layer, is I'm just going to work my way around all of the skin tones. Now, I'm not being very careful with this, right? Because I don't need to be. All I need to be is to make sure that I can accurately, well, not accurately because I'm not being very accurate. I mean, if you zoom in more and take your time, you can get this quite accurate. But what I do need to make sure I do is cover all of my pencil sketch artwork, right? I need this color to go below those lines, because you'll see what's happening as I'm coloring them. They go obviously darker. So, you know, obviously you can take more time and care than I am, but I'm just going around the whole figure, and I'm holding spacebar to scroll up when I need to. So, like I say, I'm being conscious that I go over my lines so that I don't have any weird coloration going on. Okay, so again, I'm just doing this, I should say, I'm just doing this for speed, the way I'm working at the moment. This is going to therefore cost me more time in cleaning up. So if you're more careful than I'm currently being, you know, if you're zoomed in more, you'll get a neater piece of work. So it really depends on how you want to use your time, right? So, but for the purposes of this, I'm just masking in all my colors, although I'm not masking it in, but that sentence will make sense to you in a moment. So now I have this all selected, what I need to do for speed is, rather than me get the brush and go like that, you know, sketch all over it, it's just easier for me to get the paint bucket, which might be hidden underneath your gradient tool if you can't see it, and just fill this color. Now when I click on the fill, you'll see that I get this tiny white line from where my artwork, you know, where I've already painted these lines. If I just press again, they vanish, right? But I just need to make sure I've got everywhere. So there's some bits on the hands and some bits in the arms, but I'm best just getting my paintbrush and going over them because they're only small, to make sure I've actually got them. And then again with the feet. So that is my feet, sorry, my skin coloured in and ready to go. I will need to clean it up. I will do that at the end, but you'll be able to follow that, you know. And it's the same technique as I did in the previous video to clean up the original artwork. So that is my skin colour. I'm just going to create a new layer, and this is going to be my hair. So I'll select my hair colour and I'll just paint that in very much the same, using the control brackets, the square brackets to shrink my brush size, and again making sure I go over these lines is important. So there we go, colouring that. Oh, eyebrows too. Okie doke, back to my paint bucket, fill that in, clicking twice, there we go, nice and filled. Okay, so your best bet for now is to clean all these edges off. Now that's just a case of going through with the eraser tool and going around your edges, making sure you're on the right layer, and bringing this back to where it is with the line work, right? But you don't really want to watch me going around this whole image erasing all these lines, so I'm going to just stop doing that for now. Actually, I might as well just take this to the end of the arm. There we go. Right, so going around cleaning up the artwork is key, and I would recommend you do that first. But from now on, we need to work with the colours within our image. So first of all, we're going to add some shading to this image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer. So here's my new layer, but then I'm going to right click and turn this into a clipping mask. Now what that means, and I'll just draw this using this dark color, it means I'm only going to affect the layer where the layer below has color in the pixel. So you can see here I can't actually go outside the area there, so that's important to me. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select my skin color. So I already have it selected, but if I don't, I can hold the Alt key and select on my skin color there. And this time with my paintbrush, I'm going to go in with a soft edge brush. Now the reason why I'm going in with a soft edge brush is because I want to be able to blend things. All right, so this is important that I'm able to do so. And the next thing I need to do is, I'll just go to my sketch layer, I need to decide which direction my light is going to come from. So I'm just going to go from this direction. So here's my light, it's coming this way. So in theory, things on this side are in shadow, but you can decide on where you want your light to be according to you. Right, so I'm going to go for that way with my light and just name this layer shadows. Okay, so here's my shadow layer, and then what I'm going to do is in my color picker I'm just going to go and take it slightly darker. All right, so now when I paint, you'll see it now goes darker. Now that's okay, right? However, it's best if I go with the opacity of the brush and turn it right down so that I can get a more subtle blend. So maybe around about 25% maybe might be good, but you can build this up, you know, so that's the key thing. But what's great is, I said, you can't go outside the pixel area. Now, when it comes to shading, right, and tone, what you don't want to do is work on a white background, because it's very then hard to see what light and dark is. So I'm going to take this white background, I'm going to go to edit and fill, and I'm going to fill it with a 50% grey. The reason why I do that is because now I can see what needs to go darker and what needs to go lighter. It's very hard to see lighter than white, you know, or like contrary wise, if you're on a black page, what's darker than black. So now that I've got my brush and I've got my color selected, I've turned the opacity down, I am going to go around this image and I'm just going to start shading these things in. So I'll give her some shading below her eyes and under her eyebrows there. So that would be that, give a bit of shadow on the side of the bridge of the nose. Right. Under her neck there. And then in between her chest here, that's sort of there, then under this armpit, and then all down this side of this arm, because this opposite side will be in some shadow, not all of it though. That finger definitely will be. I'm going to do this side of her body and down this thigh. So you can see here, because I've got the gradient turned down, I'm able to be a bit more subtle with my shading, and then I could gradually blend it in even more. So that's that, and then obviously on this side I'll go up the inside of this leg, because this side of the leg will be in shadow. Knee there. So work my way to the crotch there, give it a bit of shadow on that inner thigh, and then this side of the arm. Maybe a tad, whoops, under the underwear there. And obviously with the opacity like this, there's areas that I can build up and take even darker, should I need to. Right. But again, there's no right or wrong with this, because it's your vision, your eye that judges whether things need to go darker. A golden rule of thumb with digital artwork is you usually need to go darker and lighter than you think you do. Right? So there's some shading thrown in. Okay, so now, contrary wise, we will go lighter. So if I click on my skin layer and I create a new layer by that, because I already have this clipping mask, I'll have another one created. So I'm just going to call this one highlights, and I'll go to my color here and I'll hold option to pick my base skin color, and I'll go to my color picker and I'm going to go lighter. And then obviously if my highlights are coming from this direction, so left to right, then highlight wise I'm going to go on the opposite side of my shadows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this opacity down even more, because I'm going to make this a bit more subtle. So obviously this side, that's probably a bit too subtle actually. My brush is a bit too big. I could probably afford with going even lighter with that tone. So there we go. Now I can take this opacity down. It's a balancing act really when you come to do tones and skin colours. So there we go. Now I'm getting some light areas in, so I can highlight the areas of the cheeks here, this ear, this side of the neck, and the collar on her chest, where the light would catch there, possibly this piece of shoulder where the light would stand out. I'll go with a bigger brush here and I'll just whiz down this side, because this side would catch more light naturally, because in my design the light is coming from this direction. Have a bit of light there. Some light across her stomach, perhaps down this thigh. So I'm being very stylistic with it, because you know I'm working with the shapes that I have, but the light would naturally work however you want it to work. So if you were going straight on, you'd have to consider where light may hit and where it wouldn't. So you know, the parts of the body that stick out the most, so things like the knees or things like that. So I'm almost getting a marker pen-esque quality with brushes and the way that I'm working. So there we go. So I've created some highlights and some shading there, right? With the hair, I would do exactly the same technique, right? So I create a new layer, I right click, I turn it to a clipping mask, and this is my shadows for the hair. So with the hair color, again, just pick my color and I'll just take it a wee bit darker because it's already quite dark because I've gone for a brunette. In fact, we'll go a bit more darker because I've got my opacity down, of course. So let's throw in some shading for the hair. So again, where you just think the light would, not catch the hair, obviously, because we're dealing with shadows. Right, so I'm trying to create, broken up patterns for the hair there, and also trying to get some hair color in. And then, contrary wise, in another layer, I would do my highlights. Whoops. Try that again. Name that. My highlights for the hair. So I'll take that and I will go a bit brighter. Take my opacity down because I want this to be a bit more subtle. Probably a bit more subtle than that, in fact. Okay, that's probably a bit too subtle. Okay, and as you can see there, I'm bringing in some highlights for the hair there, where the light is hitting it. So there we go. We've added some highlights to our hair. We've added some shadows. Now what we can also do, right, is we can change the layer modes within Photoshop to get a more dramatic effect. So for instance, with this shadows layer here on the skin, if I were to change this to multiply, you can see it goes even darker, and then I could adjust the opacity to get a more darker but subtle effect. And then with the highlights, I could go to either screen or overlay, depending on the effect you want to give. Overlay gives a more of a spotlit color, whereas screen, just essentially brightens it. And again, I could turn the opacity of this down so I get something a bit more subtle. So that is what it is. And if I just go back in my options, that's what it was, that's what it is. Okay, so obviously you can see doing that has added a bit more contrast to this. So once we have that, it's then a case of doing the same thing with some of the details. So for instance, adding color and paint to her eyes, which would be that bit of detail, and then whoops, probably needed to do a smaller brush there. So adding some detail to her eyes and giving her lips a bit of color. So let's just give her a dazzling pink. That's probably a bit too dazzling. There we go. So, and again, I could, in separate layers, I won't for speed, but in separate layers I could spend my time adding shadows and adding highlights to this, so that it actually looked correct. And then we also need to add colour to hair clothing. So if I were again to just pick my colour, and I'm going to go to an off-white colour rather than a black, so you can see that I've got something to shade with. So exactly the same technique as before, going around with a harder brush and making sure in this time I'm actually being very careful because I'm working within my lines here, because I need this to actually be shading, because I don't want to really, I can of course clean this up, whoops, because I'm working within another layer, so there's no problem that I'm going over the skin in this sense. But just to make my life easier, it's probably better if I take a little bit of time with this, so I have less to clean up. This does require a steady hand with your mouse. So there you go, fill that. So obviously you see there are areas that I just need to clean up with my eraser. Just around the line artwork there. There we go. And very quickly, I'll just do her bottoms. All that. Tiny bit of cleanup. Whoops. So, using those techniques, and with a bit of time and care, you can end up with something like, let me just turn all these layers off and paste this in, something along these lines, right? So as you can see, that's all been shaded and pasted nicely. This is done with the lighting coming straight in and some of the detail, but the basic shading and painting techniques are exactly the same, right? So I hope you found this tutorial useful. Should you need, as I said at the start of the video, any assistance on how to clean up your pencil sketches, please feel free to watch our previous videos on this channel on how to clean up your pencil artwork. But should you have any further questions or comments, feel free to get in touch.